My mother, for those who don't know, passed away this year, 5 months ago. And when I started the Book of Lies, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. When I finished writing it, and when she finished reading it, is when she passed from breast cancer. And I tell you that because you will see that she's weaved throughout this entire book. And it is no coincidence that the main character in this book is dealing with the loss of his mother. And no coincidence that he's also dealing with the reconciliation of his father. I'm just not that good at hiding it. I'm not that subtle. And you show me a novel, and I will show you what the author is dealing with at that time. And I think, for me, it is why it's my most personal book. I didn't even realize what I was putting in there as I was doing it. And when I was reading the final pass of it, and I didn't know my mom was going to get as sick as she did, I just remember thinking, my gosh, she's just throughout this whole thing. And I love that. And I will tell you that when we first hit the bestseller list, I called my mother and I told her, I said, Mom, we're on the bestseller list. And she starts crying. And when you hear your mom cry, you start tearing up. And I'm worried that she's crying while she's driving. She's going to crash the car. So I say, Mom, where are you? And she says, I'm at Marshall's. I'm like, of course she's at Marshall's, right? We're on the bestseller list, and she's still trying to get a deal on irregular socks. And so when she passed recently, this is a true story, Marshall's heard, because I had put it on the blog, had heard that my mom was gone, and therefore their greatest customer was gone. And they sent me, true story, a gift certificate in honor of my mother to be donated to the charity of her choice. And my sister said it best when she said, I don't know if Mom will be happy right now or really pissed that she can't spend it. But this signing is for her, and all of them have been for her. And I miss her, but I think it's the best way to tell you what's really going on in this book. So the Book of Lies really started for me 11 years ago. And 11 years ago, when I finished The 10th Justice, my first novel, I went into my editor, and now it's the scariest moment. It's when you have to show your editor and tell him what your next book is going to be. You have to pretend you have another magic trick in you, and you don't know if you have another magic trick yet. And I go into my editor, and I say to him, I want to do a story, a thriller, set in modern time, but playing with the great story of Cain and Abel. And he looks at me and he says, you're an idiot. And what he was saying to me was, we just got you on the bestseller list. You're an unknown guy. We're marketing you as the next John Grisham or whatever they were marketing me as. Why are you going to go risk it all on that? And I had this moment where I could, either be strong and stand up for myself, or I could cave. And I caved faster than anyone in the history of caving. I mean, I just gave it up. I don't want to do that book at all. And I barely paid off my student loans. I wasn't going to risk my entire career on what he thought was a cockamamie idea. So I put the book aside. And then, almost 2 years ago to the day, I was in Sarasota, Florida, for the book signing for the last novel called The Book of Fate. And I'm at this book signing. It looks like a book signing here, except it's in Sarasota, Florida, so there's about 1,000 more Jews. Because with a name like Meltzer, come on, it's Florida. And I'm there, and I'm talking about my love of the character Superman. I love Superman. And this woman comes to the Q&A, and she stands up, and she says, I know more about Superman than you'll ever know. And my first thought is, that's a great question, lady. Thank you very much. And then I think to myself, there's no way you know more about Superman than I do. And she says to me, I do, because Jerry Siegel, who created Superman, is my uncle. And you would think I would do what you just do. Oh, that's interesting. I don't. I just keep going. And then another guy in the same audience, this is true, stands up and goes, I was in the army with Jerry Siegel. And then it's like every person who ever knew Jerry Siegel is at this book signing. And it's like, I'm not even making it up. I mean, there was a guy who just emailed me and said, I was at that signing, I remember. I'm like, you were there too. And it was like a meteorite in the back of my head. I just had to take notice at that moment. You got to pay attention. And I took her number down, took his number down, and eventually called him up. And she was the one who introduced me to the family members and told me about this unsolved murder that almost nobody knows about. Because in 50 years of interviews, when they say to Jerry Siegel, where'd you get the idea for Superman? He never once says, my father died in a crime. His father dies in a crime, and then he creates the world's greatest crime fighter weeks later and never tells anybody. And that's why the world got Superman. Not because America's the greatest country on earth. It's because a little boy lost his father. And I was obsessed with this story. I just was determined. I knew I was going to use it in a thriller, but I was determined that I could solve it. I thought, for sure, I'm going to solve this thing. And I went, and there were moments where I have to admit, I said, maybe I'm just playing a little bit of nerd Freud here. And I'm making connections where there shouldn't be connections. And I go back to Cleveland. I fly to Cleveland, and I go through the old Plain Dealer archives. And there's a big room of microfiche, and I'm like, let me see what Jerry Siegel might have been reading the day after his dad dies. It's not like there were so many forms of entertainment. There were a couple newspapers, and maybe there was something in the paper that sparked his imagination. And I'm going through all the microfiche from the Plain Dealer. I don't know why I'm making this hand motion when it's microfiche, but, I'm doing the thing. And I go through, and this is the day after he loses his father. And in the newspaper is a letter to the editor, and it's about why vigilantes should not exist in society. And the letter is signed A.L. Luthor, Lex Luthor, spelled E-R instead of O-R. And I'm thinking, is this where we get Lex Luthor from? And no one's ever found this because no one is as big a loser as me and cares. But I love this stuff. I love it. I am passionate about it. And when you look back at the very first appearance of Superman, what's amazing is that the first version of him, before it was published, they had two versions before the one you know. In the first one, Superman's the bad guy. He's actually the villain in the story. And in the second version, it was a story that they had done. They submitted it. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the artist, submitted it everywhere. And it got rejected everywhere. And Joe Shuster supposedly ripped the entire story apart. Just threw it in the trash. The only thing that remained, and you'll see this in the book as they talk about it, is the cover. And on the cover, which we found, someone had found it a couple years ago, you can see that the first crime that Superman is stopping is a robbery. The exact same thing that killed Jerry Siegel's father. And in the robbery, the person being robbed, I looked at it and said, oh, that looks like Jerry Siegel. His family said, no, that's his brother. So the guy puts the crime that killed his father, and then the victim of the crime puts another family member. And I'm like, does no one realize this might have affected him a little bit? And again, I love this story. I just loved it. The more I dug into it, I just was fascinated by it. And I kept going. But even to me, it was almost like half a story. It was like a story that I loved, but I knew it was just a cold case that I found fascinating. And so what I had to do is I felt like it was just halfway there. And a friend of mine said to me, you know the story of Adam and Eve and the apple? And I said, of course I know that story. He says, it's interesting because the word apple doesn't appear in the Bible. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, if you look in Bibles, the actual translation is fig or fruit. Some say that it's a pomegranate. And the word apple was put there by the Greeks because in ancient Greek, apples were a sign of destruction. That's how the word apple first entered the Bible. And then he said to me, you know the story of Cain and Abel? He says, how did Cain kill Abel? What was the murder weapon that he used? And I said, oh, I know that one. That's a rock. And he said, really, where does it say that in the Bible? He said, because the Cain and Abel story is 16 lines. It's one of the shortest stories in the Bible. And it doesn't say anything about what he used. It just says that Cain slew his brother. So some say it's a rock or a stone. Others, including Shakespeare and even Rembrandt, said there was the jawbone of an animal. Some say that Cain bit Abel's throat, and that's where we get vampires from. That is really cool to me. Okay? I mean, that's cool to me. And I start digging, and the truth is the best things that were written, some of the best academic articles that were written about the Cain and Abel story were during the Middle Ages, and they're not digitized yet. You can't find them on Google. So you have to go to, of all things, imagine this a moment, gasp, a library. And I went to the Library of Congress, and they helped me kind of dig these out. My favorite one that I found is I found this, if you look in any modern Bible today, the words will change a little depending on what version you have, but it says that Cain said to God, my punishment is too great to bear. And that's why we think Cain is such a bad guy, because he says to God, listen, I killed my brother, why are you punishing me? But you can just as easily look at older versions of that same exact passage and translate it as, my sin is too great to forgive. That's Cain saying to God, what I've done is so horrible, you should never forgive me. It's a very different version of Cain than the one we all know. And maybe, just maybe, the theory goes, Cain isn't the bad guy in this story. And what the story is about is not one brother killing another, but it's about God's capacity for forgiveness. And again, I was fascinated. So now I have these two stories, these two things that I'm researching at the same time, and I realize that in one of them, Cain, the first villain, the character that brought murder into the world, is maybe not the bad guy in the story. And Superman, a character that everyone associates with strength, is founded on vulnerabilities. And it just becomes very clear to me that the themes that I'm working on just explode right there. And I realize that what I want to write about is much bigger than just one story and another story, but actually both of them. And not to compare comic book characters and biblical characters, but these are the great stories of our time. These stories persist through generation after generation for one reason. It's not just that we think they're cool, it's that they say something about us. Cain and Abel says something about us. Superman says something about us. And that's where the Book of Lies was really born. So what I'd love to do is read a very quick, short chapter from the Book of Lies. And it'll be from chapter 2. You don't have to read chapter 1 right now. I'll explain it to you. What happens in chapter 1 is this, very simply, is Cal, who's the hero of the story, is 9 years old in chapter 1, and he's watching, when he's 9 years old, his parents in a fight, and they're arguing in the kitchen, and his father accidentally kills his mother. So you can tell just from that, this is a very uplifting tale, totally perfect for the small children in this audience, but this is chapter 2 of the Book of Lies. My name is Cal Harper. This is the second most important day of my life. Remove him, the manager of the French bistro calls out behind us. Sorry, Cal, my client Alberto apologizes, his body shaking as I help him hobble back toward our van. From the stench on his breath, Alberto's been drinking hard. From his fresh split lip, plus the tear in his ratty t-shirt, he's been fighting too. Welcome to Fort Lauderdale Beach. Just another day in paradise. You planning on helping here? I called to Roosevelt, who's reclining in the passenger seat of our dumpy white van. I'm mentoring, Roosevelt calls back in a thick Tennessee drawl. No, you're sitting on your rear while I do all the hard work, I tell him. What do you think mentoring is? Roosevelt asks, lumbering out like an old mountain cat. You got him, I ask, as I hand him our client. Isn't that why God put me on this planet? Roosevelt says, his dyed black, aged-in-the-hippie ponytail flapping in the salty ocean breeze. At 42, Roosevelt's old enough to know better than the ponytail, but we all have our weaknesses. Man, Alberto, you reek. To the few passing tourists still walking the beach, we probably look like mobsters, but our job's far more dangerous than that. Listen, thanks for calling us instead of the cops, I tell the restaurant manager, a middle-aged guy who looks like a ferret. I'm no schmuck, he laughs, dropping his French accent. Cops would take 2 hours. You take out the trash fast. He offers a handshake, and as I reach to take it, I spot a $100 bill in his palm. I pull back as if he's offering a coiled snake. Just our way of saying thanks, he adds. I don't shake back. Do you understand what I do, I ask, my thick Adam's apple pumping with each syllable. Aw, geez, he says, you're going to give me some self-important speech now, aren't you? No speech, I tell him. We take the homeless back to shelters, and what, he interrupts. If you accept the tip, it'll make it less of a good deed. I respect that, I do. But come on, be fair to yourself, he says, motioning to my faded black t-shirt. What are you, 30 years old with that baby face? You're wearing secondhand sneakers and sweatpants. To work. When was the last time you got a haircut? And come on, your van. I glance back at the van's peeling tinted windows and the swarm of rust along the back fender. Take the money, kid. If you don't use it for yourself, at least help your organization. I shake my head. You called my client trash. To my surprise, he doesn't get defensive or mad. You're right. I'm sorry, he says, still holding out the money. Let this be my apology, please. Don't make it the end of the world. I stare at my sweatpants, calculating all of the underwear and socks I could buy for our clients. Come on, bro, he says. Even Bob Dylan did an iPod commercial. What the fudge, Cal? You didn't take the money, did you? Roosevelt asks as I climb back into the van. Why are you so stubborn? Same reason you say dumb crap like what the fudge. That's different. It's not different, I shoot back. You were a minister, so you don't like to curse. I get it, Roosevelt, but it's a choice you make on principle. You were a minister, Alberto blurts from the back seat. I thought you were some special agent who got arrested. Twisting the ignition and hitting the gas. I don't say a word. That was Cal who got arrested, Roosevelt points out as we take off down A1A. Ask him why he got fired, Roosevelt adds. Losing his badge, that's what turned his hair white, Roosevelt says, pointing at my full head of thick silver hair. Nuh-uh, Alberto says. You didn't get that from your mom or daddy? I click my front teeth together, staring out at the closed tourist tea shops that line the beach. The only thing I got from my parents was a light blue government form with the charges against my father. My dad got 8 years at Glades Correction Institution. The state of Florida gave me 6 minutes to say goodbye. I remember the room smelled like spearmint gum and hairspray. Life is filled with trapdoors. I happened to swan dive through mine when I was 9 years old. That was the last time I ever saw my father. God, Roosevelt shouts, his ruddy features burning bright. You should have taken that restaurant money. Roosevelt, the only reason he was offering that cash was so when he goes home tonight he doesn't feel nearly as guilty for sweeping away the homeless guy that he thought was so bad for his fake French bistro business. Go pray or send an email to heaven or do whatever you do to let your God weigh in, but I'm telling you, we're here to help those who need it, not to give fudging penance. His lips purse at my use of the G word. Roosevelt will joke about anything. His long hair, his obsession with early, chubby Janet Jackson, so much better than the later, thinner model. Even his love of "your mama's so fat" jokes as a tool for changing the subject during an awkward social situation. But he'll never joke about God. Cal, you know what your problem is? You're a damn walrus, Roosevelt insists. When it's walking on land, walruses are the most lumbering, awkward creatures God ever gave us. But the moment it enters the water, that sucker is quicksilver. Foom, he says, slicing his hand through the air like a ski jump. Same with you, Cal. When you're working with clients, you're in the water. Foom, just quicksilver. The problem is all you want to do is stay underwater. And even the walrus knows if it doesn't come up for air, it's going to die. That's a very inspiring and far too visual analogy, I tell him. But I know who I am, and I like who I am, and when it comes to ass-faced restaurant managers who treat money like some green-colored rosary, well, no offense, but I'm not for sale. And you, of all people, shouldn't be either. Roosevelt leans back in his reclined seat and lets out a hearty laugh. Your mama's so fat. Sorry, Roosevelt, I shouldn't have said that. The horse on her polo shirt is real. You used that last week, I tell him. Your mama's so fat in elevators it says maximum occupancy, 12 patrons, or your mama. Does that really make you happier, I ask. Just take the money next time, Cal, Roosevelt says as he twists the dial on the old stolen police scanner we superglued to the dash. Have an 86 requesting nearby units to Victoria Park, a woman's voice says as the scanner crackles to life. The park is less than a mile away. Turns out this is the call I've been waiting 19 years for. Cal, I need help, Roosevelt screams. Rosie, what the hell's going on? I yell back, sticking my head out the window and squinting into the darkness. He's kneeling over our newest homeless client who's curled at the base of a queen palm tree. It's a bad one, Cal. He's a bleeder. A ping of rain hits the windshield, and I jump at the impact. If this were my first day on the job, I'd leap out of the van and rush like a panicked child to Roosevelt's side. But this isn't day one. It's year 2. He got his social, I call out. Kneeling at the base of the queen palm, Roosevelt tucks his flashlight under his armpit and rolls what looks like a heavy-set man onto his back. Even from here, I can see the blood that soaks the man's stomach. His wallet's gone, Roosevelt shouts. Sir, can you hear me? I need your social security number. In my left hand, I'm already dialing 911. In my right, I prop my laptop on the center console, but I never take my eyes off Roosevelt. Breast cancer took my aunt, the aunt who raised me a few years back. I don't have many friends. I have this job, and I have Roosevelt. Cal, I got a social, Roosevelt shouts. Sir, were you mugged? You have a gunshot wound. Give me 1 sec, I call back. The computer hums, our tracking software loads, and I click on the button marked Find Client. On screen, a blank form opens, and I tab over to the section labeled Social Security. Cal, you need to hurry, Roosevelt adds. 078051120, Roosevelt announces as I key in the man's Social Security number. In my ear, the 911 line continues to ring. In the distance, refusing to wait, Roosevelt rips open the man's shirt and starts applying pressure to his wound. And on screen, I get my first good look at his identity. Lloyd Randall Harper, Dania Beach, Florida, date of birth, June 19th, 52 years old. A swell of heat burns my chest, my throat. I can't breathe. I open my mouth to call Roosevelt's name, but my lips won't move. Lloyd Randall Harper, my father. This is 911, the operator announces in my ear. What's your emergency? That's the end of chapter 3. Ooh, scary. So, 2 things I do want to tell you about. Actually, 3 things. 1, only a loser, and this is the first rule of being an author, only a loser wears the exact same outfit to a book signing that he's wearing in his author photo on the back of the book. Okay? I'll give you a moment to check your books right now. I realized that as I was walking in. Hey, it looks just like you. Exactly like you. So the other thing you'll see under this spectacularly awful author photo is you'll see an offer for the soundtrack for the Book of Lies. It's an actual soundtrack by Sony Music and Victor Records. And does a novel need a soundtrack? No, it does not. Is it cool to have a soundtrack? Yes, it is cool to me. And it is cool to me because it lets me, I get to pick the songs. It lets me use my years of mix making skills from college, where I made such great mixes as Meltz E Fresh, Meltz E Soul, Bell Biv de Meltz, and Please Meltz Don't Hurt 'Em. And the truth is when you get to pick the songs, you show off your musical skill. And I said, using this great musical skill that I do have, Sony said, what songs would you like? And I said, well, I'd love the theme from the TV show The Greatest American Hero. And thank you for the one person who watched it with me. And they said to me, you can't have it because The Greatest American Hero is owned by Warner Brothers and we're Sony, and you can't have it. And I remember in that moment that Stephen J. Cannell, who was a fellow novelist and who also created The Greatest American Hero and the A-Team and my childhood, I knew someone who knew him. And I called him up, and I got him on the phone, and I said, listen, Warner Brothers owns this, and I need trying to get the rights. He said, Warner Brothers doesn't own this, he tells me. I said, well, who does? And he says, I own it. And I say to him, can I have it? And he says, yes. So we get The Greatest American Hero theme, and that's cool to me. We get REM, which is cool to me, right? Especially here. And we also get a song called The Book of Lies. Someone read the book, wrote a song called The Book of Lies. I don't care if it's the worst song in the entire universe. That's the greatest song of all time to me. And I was thrilled to have that, but what the best part of the soundtrack is we had someone actually score the book, like a movie. The Sony person who does their movies, or some such, I should say, scored the book. So he went through the key chapters, chapter 1, the chapter I read you, chapter 7, and you can go through and hit play on your iPod. You can download it at iTunes or Amazon, and you can actually hit play on your music player and read along and hear the music that goes specifically with that chapter. They sent me all this music. I actually threw away about half of it. I thought it was bad. We settled on songs that I thought were much more fitting to the scene. And it is as close as I can come to giving you the emotion that I'm trying to convey as I write. And that is pretty neato to me. And I had never seen anybody do that, so I thought we should try it. And the other thing I do want to talk about is the Superman house. For those who don't know, when I was researching this book, I went to Cleveland. I wanted to see the spot where Superman was created. I wanted to see the exact house where a 17-year-old kid sat up in bed one night and said, I have an idea, and gave us the character Superman. And so I flew to Cleveland, and I thought it was going to look like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting, that there would be, right on the front porch would be steaming apple pie, and it would just be right there for me. But it wasn't. And I should tell you that the house where Google was founded is protected. But the house where Superman was created is a mess. And I don't mean that it just needs some paint. I mean, it's a wreck. There's holes in the walls. There's holes in the ceiling. And I went there, and there was something just wrong about that to me. I mean, that just should not be right. And the people who live there, they still live there now, even in the midst of this. The wife said to me, Cleveland, Ohio won't even give us a plaque to say that Superman was created here. And I said to her, I'm going to get you your plaque. And then I said to her, I'm going to be back. And I didn't know what that really meant. It was just a macho thing to say at the moment. I was like, I'm going to be back. And I gave her the finger, the whole thing. And then I left there, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And I did the only thing that I always know how to do, and that is to tell the story. And I started telling the story. I started telling